Welcome back to the 127 Fit podcast. Today's guest is the founder of Rooney Bloom. He is also a plantscaper, along with being a commercial and residential, sustainable and conscious integration expert. Today's guest is Eric Rooney. Eric, I want to welcome you to the 127 Fit podcast.
Hey Q, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share my love and a little bit more about me and what I do.
For sure. So, Rooney, we're just going to jump right into things. I've got 4 questions that I like to ask all of my guests just to kind of get the conversational ball rolling, so to speak. The first question that I have for you this evening is, how do you start your day? Do you have a specific morning routine or morning ritual you like to stick to on most mornings?
Good question. I would say that's definitely seasonal. During the summer, I wake up, cup of coffee, and I'm in the garden immediately, usually in just my robe and my skivvies. During the winter, it's a little slower, a little bit much slower of a progression. It usually still involves coffee, trying to work on some more tea on the acidity, so a little bit more tea these days. But it's just kind of slow start, usually checking with my plants, making sure that they're nice and watered for the day. And then it's usually straight to emails after that.
Okay, cool. Awesome. The next question, favorite book or book that you like to gift often?
Good question. I've never gifted a book to anybody in my life.
Oh, okay, cool.
And if we are being totally honest, I don't think I've read a book cover to cover probably since middle school. So what I would say I would most likely be inclined to find reading would be a visual nursery guide or nursery book. Okay. So working with clients, I'm constantly considering plants, different landscapes, shaded areas, and things of these sorts. So most of the time the book I'm reading is including sunlight, watering amounts, and the types of plants, usually with a photo too.
Cool. Awesome. Favorite quote, mantra, or word? Now, before you answer this, and you can take it any direction you want, Rooney, but we all go through different seasons of life. So maybe it's a favorite quote, mantra, or word, maybe for 2020 or the season of life you're in currently. Maybe it's a favorite quote, mantra, or word from a previous season. However you want to kind of take that, favorite quote, mantra, or word.
I can't choose one, but it's John Muir for sure. John Muir was a preservationist, a conservationist, an earth lover, and a lot of his quotes and what he's remembered for are similarities in human beings and our bodies and nature. And so when I think about what probably my favorite quote or individual to be quoted, I'll put a twist on the question.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Would probably be John, because I feel like many times humans are disconnected from the symbolism in nature and our bodies. And so I think these quotes really resonate with me, and they really resonate with people. And sometimes that's subconsciously too. It's not necessarily, sometimes people will say they love the quotes or they love the symbolism in nature and humans, but really it's a lot of the same.
Mm-hmm. Now, John, does he have some like books and stuff that out there too? Or?
He does. Yeah, he does.
Okay.
He also has different areas north of the Bay Area that you can visit that are named after him as well.
Okay.
That are just sacred spaces to enjoy. And yeah, I do believe he has a few books. I'm doing him a complete, total injustice here. He's a fantastic individual, and I just came across one of his quotes the other day, and that's why I was kind of thinking about that's something cool. I want to live by, but I can't remember specifically what it was.
That's okay. That's good. Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Next question, final question, kind of as part of the warm up here. Favorite or most listened to podcast, or you can, if you're not necessarily a podcast person, maybe somebody that's on social media, maybe YouTube, somebody that you really find great value in, kind of the message that they're putting out to the world.
Yeah, that would definitely have to be Bloom and Grow Radio, which is a fantastic podcast. the founder of Bloom and Grow Radio, who's also a actress in the Broadway performance Cats, is a platform for plantrepreneurs, if you will, of people in the plant community, whether it's plant store owners or this summer I was featured on that podcast on internal versus external growing of cannabis. So I collaborated with an internal grower of cannabis, and we just kind of talked about on the advantages and disadvantages of a controlled growing environment. So I would definitely say that podcast. I think it's really approachable from a new grower standpoint. If you're looking at having a stronger green thumb, getting better at taking care of house plants, really virtually anything. There's even an episode of how to start a plant shop. So Bloom and Grow Radio is where it's at. I really enjoy her. She's fun. She's spunky. And she is a person that I can connect with on a human level.
All right. Very good. Okay. So kind of at this transition, we're going to go into your backstory. Rooney, I always love to just kind of find out where my guests grew up, kind of some of those younger years, because I'm a firm believer that our childhood, the adults in our lives during childhood, during those developmental years really, is kind of like a catalyst of who we become as adults, right? So if you don't mind sharing with myself and the 127 Fit podcast listeners, where did you grow up? What were those younger years like? We'll kind of maybe just work our way up to high school, and then we'll move on from there.
That's great. Yeah, I was born in South Florida, Coconut Creek, Florida. I lived there until I was about 12 years old, then moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Did a quick stint there, wrapped up 8th grade, and moved to Chapin, South Carolina, which is about 2 hours inland from Charleston, South Carolina, and just north of the state capital, Columbia, right on Lake Murray. So I got my high school education in Chapin, South Carolina, and my undergrad, I got a bachelor's of science and middle school education from the College of Charleston, and taught for a year there in Charleston, and then really started exploring the world and found a teaching job in Denver. Landed out here. Okay,
so any siblings?
I do. I have an older sister and brother, Caitlin and John. I have a nephew, William, that's John's son, and a nephew, Alex, that is Caitlin's son, and a younger brother, Joseph, and they are all local. My whole family is local, including my parents. And within 2 years of me moving to Denver, they all kind of packed up and fell in love as well.
Cool. So you were kind of the catalyst then for the rest of the family.
I was here for 2 years before I had any blood out here.
Yeah, okay.
Now everyone's within a 10-mile radius of me.
Cool. Okay. Now, in terms of like kind of like just your family life and those younger years, kind of like what was the home environment like? What's maybe something as you look back and reflect on your childhood and just your parents' influence in your life personally, what's maybe a one or two takeaways, Rooney, from your childhood, from specifically your parents?
I would say first would be the spirit of the entrepreneurial spirit, the idea that if I wanted to do something or if I wanted to hustle and make money, I could do something. So in middle school and high school, I was mowing lawns in order to make an extra buck and we lived on a lake, so I wanted to put gas in the boat, and my father wasn't paying for it. And so in order to do that, I had to do odds and ends. I was always encouraged to have a job and to explore jobs. So that's one thing I definitely picked up at home. The other thing would be probably my father working to put me through school. So my father financially supported me through my college career, which allowed me the experience of, moving out of the house and meeting people, going to a liberal arts school and getting a vastly different environment. I grew up Roman Catholic. And so being able to move out and go to a liberal arts school was quite a different experience, one that I'm so grateful for. And financially, I was in high school. I was making no money. I didn't know about loans at that time, and I don't know what would it look like to take out a loan. So those two things I'm extremely grateful for, that entrepreneurial spirit and my parents being able to provide for me to have that opportunity of getting a higher education.
Cool. Now, in school, like, we're talking about, like elementary, middle school, things like that. what was kind of like, did you and your siblings spend a lot of time outside? I mean, you mentioned kind of the lake. You know, were you guys really kind of like free range, outdoorsy? Were you involved in sports? What did kind of those extracurricular activities look like for you when you're younger?
Yeah, free range. I love it.
I grew up free range and it was good.
Yeah, you hear that
healthy.
with you hear it with
Healthy.
chickens. You hear like free range chickens, but I grew up free range. And even today, you know, people talk to me about TV shows, and I'm like, I've never seen that, or I've never even heard of it, because as a almost 31-year-old, you know, identifying male, I've never. I don't watch TV. It's hard for me to kind of grasp this concept when my brain is thinking outdoors, or what could I be doing like to be more active. And so growing up, I played football, believe it or not. A lot of people sitting here with pink nail polish on. You know, I played football. I was a state swimmer. Cool. So I made it to states a few times.
What stroke? I was on swim team as well.
Free. Oh, it was just easy for me.
Awesome.
Butterfly looked like... Yeah, that wasn't...
Dude, it's tough, but isn't that is the most beautiful stroke?
It is. It really is.
Like when you watch the Olympic swimmers, it's breathtaking.
It really is.
So beautiful.
I agree.
Yeah.
And so I was always outside. I was always playing games. I was playing, you know, Army in the Woods. I was pretending that I was a hunter. I was... You know, with my neighbors, we'd be up late, like take the kayaks out to the lake at night. So we were always outside, and I'm still that way. And kind of going back to what you said earlier, is during the summer, as soon as I put on my robe and my coffee, I'm up with the sun, and then going down with the sun. That's kind of my body and my routine. But I was always outside. I'm still outside when I can be and when my body's comfortable. Here in Denver, you know, it was, I think, a high of 48 today, and I sat outside and just kind of looked in the sun's direction because it felt so nice. And it feels natural to me to be outside. I feel energized. I feel less lethargic. I feel more encouraged to be active when I'm outside. You know, I could hike all day, but when somebody, you know, wants me to necessarily go to an organized fitness session, I'm more grumpy about it, or I'm more prone to say no and inclined to say no. Versus if it's snowshoeing, I'm all in. Or if it's hiking, I'm all in.
How was your relationship with your siblings? Was there a sibling that you were more close to growing up, or not?
I was pretty close to my younger brother growing up. I would say I was closer to my younger brother growing up. Certainly not the way now, unfortunately. But yeah, I would say we were closer growing up. He was outdoors as well. We were always like building like swings from the trees, or some type of tree fort, or building something. You know, we would always fight over mowing the lawn. I'm not sure why. I'd have to reflect on that. But I remember, like, he was too short to mow it, so my mom would tape a can of soup to the bottom of his shoe so he could reach the riding lawnmower, the pedals.
I love it.
But yeah, I was probably closest to my younger brother. But I was very outgoing growing up, so I was constantly hanging out with friends, even if they were younger than me or older than me in the neighborhood. There was always somebody calling the house, "Hey, is Rooney there?" And my mom's like, "Which Rooney? There's 4 of them." Right. And it was, you know, it was interesting to see, but yeah, I had lots of people I was hanging out with.
Cool. Before we kind of transition into college, what's we all have struggles in life, right? And especially when we're younger, we're trying to. I mean, you're developing and you're trying to fit in here. I think it's just kind of a natural thing as human beings. We want acceptance, right? We want to fit in. We're going through, you know, going through puberty. We're going through just different struggles. Was there anything that kind of stands out as we sit right here, Rooney, in your mind from, like those younger years, that was something that was difficult for you, or maybe something that was a struggle, something that you kind of had to overcome, or maybe even to this day you're still working through it?
Yeah, definitely still working through it. Growing up in a conservative household, a religiously conservative household, is the complete opposite of where I'm at in my life today, and where I would encourage my family, my personal family, to go, my fiance and I to go, and not something that I expect that I'll have children one day, but So growing up, yeah, I mean, I had a joyful childhood. Growing up was great, and I feel when I think about my childhood, it was very joyful. But when I reflect back on it from the wisdom that I have now, I can see that there is a lot of experiences that I've been provided in my young adulthood that are now making me reconsider what I viewed to be truth and reality as I grew up. And so I'm very thankful for growing up in the ways that I did. And there was a lot of wonderful opportunities that I, was provided. But my whole mindset is a 180 from how I was raised.
Would you be open and willing to just expound on that? Because I grew up in a very conservative home in Northwest Iowa, and as I've gotten older and had different life experiences, it really makes you question certain things that were maybe instilled in you, ingrained in you, conditioned in you, which I think that's good. I think it's healthy to question and not just say, well, this is the way that I was raised, this is the way it's always been done, so I'm just going to go in that direction, right? I feel like that's blindness, that's ignorance, and ignorance isn't bliss. So you talk about, gaining some wisdom. You talk about, kind of your truth and this reality. I would love to kind of just hear a little bit more, if you don't mind, sharing kind of like what some of that truth and reality and wisdom is for you now.
Sure. Specifically, I can remember in South Carolina where I went to school, if you were not white, there was a very specific area of our cafeteria where you ate. And that is real. And I'm 31 years old. I'm not 48. I'm not 55. I'm not 70.
Right.
This happened, and we're talking recently, and the relative time period here. And so, thinking about that, and my exposure to what I consider my experiences through diversity, I know. And that was many years ago, because I've been out of high school for many years, 14 years. But it's my duty to provide myself more opportunities to listen to stories from colored people, from minority groups, from anybody who is considered different. It's my duty to listen to their perspectives so that I can gain a more conscious awareness of things that I maybe wasn't able to learn perspective on as a high schooler or as a middle schooler. Additionally, what family structure looks like. Family structure to me is not a self-identifying woman and a self-identifying male. It's a group of love. It's what you consider what love would be, and that's unconditional love. And that's a family structure. And maybe that's children, and maybe that's two women, and maybe that's two men, maybe that's a man and a woman, maybe that's, who knows what that definition is, as long as there's love. And so I think those two things I've been working on, I'll continue to work on and appreciate and respect, is listening to other people's stories, trials and their tribulations, and family structure, and that family structure isn't just between a man and a woman. It's between individuals and humans capable of love.
I appreciate you sharing that.
You're welcome.
I
love being asked that, because we don't have opportunities to be vulnerable and share that. And so
100%.
with me, I just
100%.
have that in me, right? And you can't have an opportunity to reflect on what I just told you unless you ask it, unless I can feel vulnerable and comfortable to share it. And everyone that's listening as well. And maybe we'll think collectively more consciously. Perspective helps to shift your perspective a little bit. And my perspective can't be shifted unless I can, as I meet everybody, all of our perspectives are shifted. But when we don't take the time to meet people that are minorities or different than us, then we can't. I hear a lot of people say, I don't ever watch the news. And I hear a lot of, white people saying I don't watch the news. And I consider that to be privilege. It's our duty to understand the policies and procedures in place that are hurting our brothers and sisters so that we can advocate for them as well. Because in what other format are we going to be able to stand up in the name of injustices? We're not, unless we watch these things. What news are you watching? We can talk about that in what news stations as well, but it's our duty to be aware, because as I know it here in America, freedom is not free. And a lot of my people and a lot of my family don't have the ability to say, I am free, or I can practice freedoms here in America that other individuals here in America do. So we have a duty and a responsibility, and me as an individual with white privilege.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And when you said, listening to people's stories, that's what this whole podcast, is. I invite people to come on. And what did I tell you when we're going through the notes and stuff? And I tell all my guests, the only agenda I have, Rooney, is that you share your story, right? Yeah. Because, dude, I'm telling you straight up, like, my heart, my life has been changed through this podcast, through inviting people on to share their story. Because before I started this podcast and began to just listen to people's stories, I was very closed off in certain areas. I've realized that last year, 2019, I went through a great awakening. I realized, like, I personally, Quentin, had closed myself off to a lot of people, to a lot of beliefs, to a lot of different things. And as I realized that and stepped in that awakening and opened my heart up, opened my mind up, opened my ears up, opened my eyes up, guess what? There's so much power in that, man. Now, I don't have to believe in everything that you're going to share tonight. I don't have to agree with everything that you're going to share, and vice versa, right? But you and I, as two grown adult men, we can have an awesome, powerful conversation that positively impacts a lot of people because we're willing to share, we're willing to listen, and we're just willing to have a conversation, right?
Exactly.
It's so
right.
good, man.
It is.
So I'm right with you.
Yes.
Listen to people's stories. You don't have to agree. You don't have to believe in what they believe in. But just be willing to listen.
And make the time for that, too. A lot of people say, I don't have the time. Well, the clock isn't changing for us. It's our duty to manage our own time and our schedules.
Yep.
So if you want to hear other people's stories, you've got to make the time.
Absolutely.
You've got to make the time.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Good. Woo! The fire's going, man. The fire's burning. Okay, so let's jump back into kind of like your story. So you mentioned college a little bit as you were unpacking things a few minutes ago. Let's just rehash that a little bit. You talked about going to a liberal arts school. I got a liberal arts education as well. So again, what did you study? Where did you go to school? What did the undergraduate years look like for you? How was that experience?
It was really wild. I drank a lot, because it was something that was so taboo at home. And I think, again, it goes back to what was closed off and maybe was sheltered from me at home. Mm-hmm. And when I got out to, I vividly remember the day that, my parents dropped me off. And I was thinking, for 18 years, I've slept in their home. Yeah. I've came home at night with my mom, every single time I came home. Sometimes my curfew was 12, and on special occasions I could get it to 2 during high school. Uh-huh. But every time I came home, it was my duty to wake up my mother and be like, hey, Mom, I'm home. Hey, Mom, I'm home. Hey, Mom, I'm home. So I remember the first night of college being dropped off, and it was like, what the hell is this? I'm all of a sudden in this one of the most stunning historical towns in the world, Charleston, South Carolina, with virtually everything at my fingertips, and I wilded out, and it was great. And I was on a strict biology track first. I really was going the route of being a doctor or some type of medical career, if you will. I really started to lose focus, I think, on my education because I was exploring humans, and just being outgoing and life and all sorts of cool, fun jobs. I was a private driver for an entertainment producer. There was a lot of fun things I was just engaged in. And in order to graduate in 4 years, according to the commitment of my father, because he wouldn't pay for anything after 4 years, I had to graduate within 4 years. So basically went to my advisor, and college advisor said, with what I had left in 4 years, I could graduate with a teaching degree, which I was great with. I had never not thought I couldn't be a teacher. I had always been around kids growing up in a large extended family. And the College of Charleston was great. I got a bachelor's degree in middle school education. I think that's what the degree says. I'm kind of anti degrees because
I got you. Yeah.
now my father spent a lot of money, and I spent a lot of time in pursuing a degree where I'm not in today, and
Right.
I have a foundation in teaching, of course, but I don't think any 18-year-old or 19-year-old or 20-year-old or 21-year-old knows what they're doing in order to invest in a really expensive piece of paper that's now framed. And
Right,
for
right.
me, I've learned a lot of what I do now in plants and horticulture and agriculture and working with the community and putting myself out there and taking control of it myself. Whereas I wish that money could have been spent on experiences rather than a higher education degree, because I think experiences maybe could have put me in a different spot now. But college was great. I don't talk to too many people that I went to school with, but I remember I ached with pain leaving Charleston and leaving what was a very immature lifestyle. It was it was not sustainable. And I can assume that if I was still there, I probably wouldn't be alive. So I knew I had to leave because I started learning about things that I never was exposed to.
Right.
And being at home, and I was exposed to a lot. I traveled internationally, but being able to meet people or being able to drink or party or express myself sexually was not a thing really growing up. And then so in college, it was a time where I was like, I'm going to do me now. So it was great. It was great. And then on to bigger and better things, which was Colorado after that.
Yeah. So let's transition. So you get your degree in middle school education. You leave kind of your college, town and things like that. And then you immediately move out to Denver. Is that correct? And got your first teaching job?
Well, I taught for 1 year in Charleston,
Okay.
Middle school history and science. And I used some of my professional development money at the end of that year to travel to China and take some courses in Beijing. And there I just had this idea that when I moved back to Charleston, it was just going to become this repetitive process of me like waking up hungover, trying to teach middle schoolers. Because I was still living that lifestyle. I was very involved I was a socialite there. Now they have, Charleston, there's a few reality TV shows out of there. And it's an interesting place, but there it was not sustainable for me. And so I taught for a year there. And after that year, I traveled a little bit. And then I was like, I've got to get out. So I applied for some jobs in Denver, got the job teaching just south of Denver, and started teaching out here, middle school science.
Now, why Denver?
Denver, I had been to a concert at Red Rocks here,
Okay.
and the air. I fell in love with the air quality. I smoked cigarettes, Marlboro Lights. They were delicious. And when I got off the plane, my body, I connected. I think I was a connection with the earth there, and I think I'm now realizing that literally as we speak, because I got off the plane and I remember thinking like I didn't even have this nicotine craving, because that's a whole different craving, right?
Yeah, right.
And so not only did I not want to smoke, but I didn't have this nicotine craving, and so I felt good. I just felt better, I think, than I had felt living in Charleston, where I was smoking, and living at sea level, where the humidity was crazy, and it was just not for me at that time. And so that's, I think, what made me make the move. But I had been to a concert, Dead Mouse concert at Red Rocks. It was great. It was great. And
Denver's different, man. Like,
so different.
It's just, I tell people all the time, like, just this kind of like Denver, Boulder, like, it's just, even just statewide, it's just different out here, man. There's so many like-minded individuals that are open, that are progressive, that are willing to explore, willing to try new things, willing to listen to others. Like, it's just it's Denver is different. That's the best way I can put it.
And I think initially, subconsciously, you're right. That's probably what it was too. Is I knew these were my people. Like, this was more of my tribe per se than South Carolina.
Right.
I think there was even a TV show once. Yeah, anyways, this was my tribe, and feeling and hearing, and I just felt I probably more comfortable. But and the outdoors here. We've got the seasons, we've got the hiking, we've got the skiing, and now in 2020, it's a bit different because it's so big, and there's so much going up, and so many people love it, and I'm so grateful that so many people love skiing and hiking. But I struggle with I-70. Especially on the weekends, I won't go near it.
Right.
I used to, but it's a beautiful place. It is different, and it's a good different.
Yeah. Okay, so before we kind of get into all things plants and everything that has transpired post-teaching, because I spent the last 2 years of my life in public education in Colorado Springs, I really want to kind of hear your side of just your personal experience in teaching. And before we turn on the mic, we kind of got into, just the craziness of public education in our country. I don't really want to touch on that. I just want, to hear your personal experience in teaching, maybe some things that you learned, post getting out of, South Carolina, coming to Denver, you're teaching, you're connecting with kids. And I am so very passionate, Rooney, about the next generation, because the next generation we've got as adults, whether we have our own kids or not, we've got to realize we've got to pour into the next generation because they're literally up next. No pun intended, right? So I'm so passionate for me personally to take the gift of fitness that was given to me as a youth and pass it on to the next generation. That's my thing, right? Fitness and youth. So how was your teaching career? How was it for you? And what are a few things that maybe some students taught you, or what are some things that experience taught you?
Sure. The restrictions within teaching allowed me to see the need to be able to offer people information in multiple different formats. So teaching for me was great, but I think many times in a classroom, it's tough to reach out to each individual. So what I took from education into my career as an entrepreneur and as a plant lover was that each individual, even as a human being, obtains and retains information differently. Whether that's visually, maybe a video, whether that's, audio, or that's kinesthetically by doing. And so I really enjoyed teaching. I really did. And being able to see people's, also known as the students, express themselves as individuals and realizing that everybody is different, that, that information can't be provided in just one or two ways, that we must exhaust ourselves with repeating the truth in science and in fitness and youth and what health actually is and looks like and the holistic approach to that. And so I've taken a lot of that. And, I was a substitute teacher up until last spring when really my schedule just didn't allow to it. So, and now I teach adults in many different formats. So I took a lot of what I did in a formal career with education in our younger generation, and I now apply that towards our older generation. And I still do classes for kids as well. I always offer teachers opportunities to get engaged in their classrooms, to be able to offer, number one, some relief from topics that maybe they're not so inclined to know about, but number two, just something that, they can kick back for the day and have somebody else be the expert, and the teacher just be the facilitator for that expert to share with something that is so important, being our next generation.
Now, you mentioned kind of the restriction or rigidity of like public education. Did that, for you personally, did that just kind of drive you nuts? It did, and I broke just a lot of rules. That's funny to me. Yeah. When I tell people, I just telling somebody the other day at the gym that I'm a personal trainer at, I'm like, I got called into the principal's office more as a teacher than I did as a kid, as a student. Me too. Because, dude, like, I mean, I don't even cuss. Like, I'm very, like, conscious with my words, but I'm not PC. I'm a little rough around the edges.
Yeah.
I'm super free spirited. And the thing is, now in our culture, dude, it's like you say one thing to one kid, completely fine. You say the exact same thing to another kid, and it's like they go home and say, Mr. Q said, I'm like, so pull me in the principal's office. Hey, Mr. Q, did you say that? I'm like, well, yeah, I did. Like, you got it. I'm like, dude, why? Come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was probably kind of tough then, huh?
It was, and for me, I just stuck to my core root of, as long as I'm doing this with the intention of truth and what's best for the kid, take me out in cuffs. I was always willing to lose my job in what was best. And I did cuss. I did. Right. And I would tell the students, like, you can raise your eyebrows, but I'm a human too, you know? And I'll do better. And I'll do better for the reason because I'm supposed to be a leader for you, and it's inappropriate to maybe use those words in front of individuals that are your age. Now, talking about respect, I should be respected as an adult, and that I could use those words as I see fit. And working with middle schoolers is nice in many facets because most of the time they get it. But it was interesting because the individuals and the students that are running home and telling their parents were from the conservative families. Always from the conservative families. And they were the same children that were being pulled out of my classroom during sex ed. And they were the same children who weren't understanding what a period was and understanding that was from a female aspect because as an 8th grade boy, the parents didn't want them to know that. And so these things and what we don't have control of, and because that's something that we do vote on, and the exposure to what we can provide and not provide our students from a state level and what we adhere to in these curriculums, it's just weird and it's just interesting, and it sets a lot of our students up for failure, honestly, when we look at it. So that's why I was pulled into the office. But I was like, keep pulling me into this, keep pulling me into the office because if you're gonna fire me for, you know, and I think that's why I wasn't fired, is because they're never. Sure, could maybe I work on the way that I provided and approached situations
right.
and my passion and how my passion played out in front of children? Yes.
Right.
But was I always doing something that was true and honest and with integrity and dignity of the individual? 100%. Nothing but. So,
that's good.
yeah. And I was so thankful. I love the individual that I worked for at the school that I worked for, and I would consider her a very good friend of mine to this day, and she supported me. So I was thankful that I was in a situation where I had supportive leadership as well, because that's important in educational settings too.
Absolutely.
Because you can have a principal that will go to bat for you with a parent, or you could have a principal, which I know in many cases, that will not.
Yep.
And they're going to protect that student.
Yep.
And you lose a lot of respect as a teacher and self-worth through that process because the child won. And the child won in that case. And I think we're hiring good people. And if we're not, then maybe we should think about a higher salary for teachers so that we could hire more quality teachers. Because I know I charge a quality price when I'm doing my entrepreneurial work because it's what I'm worth. And I think teachers are worth it too because it's the most important job in the world.
Man.
And I tell all people that.
Dude, I'll tell anybody, you know, until the day I die that like us specials teachers, you know, we got it pretty good, dude. Especially like PE, man, like we've got it good. But like, dude, when you talk about like elementary teachers, they gotta teach the kids math, science, social studies, all that stuff. Then they gotta have the connections with the parents and the administrator. Like, dude, those 2 years I was in public education, I have such an immense respect for public educators because, dude, and you know, people are always like, oh, dude, you get summers off, dude, like you need that just to refuel, man. Like, people do not understand like how much, and just like any other profession, there's good, there's bad, there's indifferent, right? But I mean, for the most part, when you got people that are in public education, they're there because they love the kids, they're passionate about educating, they know the importance of, you know, reading and science and math and all this. Like, I've got so much respect, man. They are beautiful, powerful individuals that, you know, are trying to, again, pour into that next generation that we already kind of talked about the importance of. Now, before we move on from the education piece of things, you mentioned expression earlier. How did you, Rooney, provide that platform for your students to have that self-expression again, kind of within the context of maybe some of that rigidity or restriction, but how did you find was a very productive way for you to provide that expression, that self-expression for your students while you were a public educator?
By being authentic. Every day showing up authentically. And that's where, mentioning earlier, where I did cuss sometimes, and because that's where I was at that time, using those types of words in my life, and I think authentically that's how I showed up. And being able to, when I was, per se reprimanded in the principal's office, it was because, I was showing up authentically for my students. I was answering their questions honestly and appropriately. And I think when you do that, that provides a platform to other people to see that role model that everyone talks about. You're asked about who's a role model. Who's a role model? Well, my role models are individuals who have been authentic. It's not my mother and my father. They're not authentic people. It's people who are authentic. It's who are themselves, who have been able to do the work during a substantial amount of time. Sometimes it's people later than others, but being able to do the work around learning who your authentic self is, and also being able to show that respect to other people as well. So showing up for that, my students being able to see that, and them being able to do that in a safe space as well. Being able to come to the classroom and being able to be themselves. When they're down and out, being able to be down and out. There's no sit upright and do this. Are you tired? Why am I going to sit here and try to tell you to put your head up if you're tired? Something else is going on. Why am I going to combat the situation when somebody is eating a snack in my classroom? They're hungry. Why would I ever tell anybody to put away a snack? But the classroom rules are no eating, or no eating in the computer lab. A child is hungry. That child should be eating. No questions asked every single time. Adults maybe should be learning about routine and when it's appropriate to eat, and the amounts and quantities around a meal so that they're not eating maybe during a business meeting. But being able to do these things authentically and respect these children like they're children provides a platform for children to, I think, approach you honestly and to have no boundaries. And that's why I had such wonderful relationships with my students, because they could see that. Come as you are. There's not this necessary need for you to, have this front up. Did you study last night? No. Why am I going to put a test down in front of your face and you just told me you didn't study right now? Maybe I'm going to talk to your family about why and what time should be dedicated around studying, or I'm going to figure out maybe why you're not studying at all. Maybe you don't know how to study. But I'm not going to sit here and set you up for failure and you're going to get a 0 now because you just told me you didn't study, or you didn't eat breakfast this morning because your family couldn't afford it, or you have come from a single parent household. There's a whole plethora of things to consider, and I think that's respect of the individual. And I do that same in my business life today. When I approach somebody, or I haven't gotten an invoice that's not been paid in a certain amount of time, I do my best to consider that individual. In a more adult, format. It's not so much did you eat today, or some of those types of things, or is this reasonable? But so I showed up for my students, and that's how I provided this place where they could grow. They were respected, they were allowed to grow in this safe space, and I was authentic with them.
Okay, now there had to have been experiences post high school for you to step into this realization or this understanding, this type of what you just got done very eloquently explaining. That doesn't just like pop up into our consciousness, right? It happens through experience. It happens through experiences. So my question is, how did you come to that point where expression through authenticity is how you are going to really show up for your students,
or just be your best self, right? Because this is applicable also to, I think, adults as well. And what I think and how I got to this place was seeing people criticized or judged. I don't like that word because it's just there's no depth to that. People being criticized, mistreated, misused, abused, belittled because of just who they were. And sometimes that was their skin color. Sometimes that was their sexual orientation.
Right.
Sometimes that was their gender. Just their identifying gender. Sometimes people are made fun of just because they're girls or just because they're boys. And so I think it was so important for me to be an example of authenticity or to encourage that, because I think I've seen what disruption and harm comes from people who are mistreated.
Good. I appreciate you expounding on that.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'm thinking about things that I haven't really thought of, because again, I'm not thinking about these things unless people are asking questions. And how often are these people asking questions? And I think this is what community does. You look at what cultures are talking. It's poor cultures. And people are doing podcasts, right? It's poor cultures. Why? Because they have the time to do it. Whereas us, we're like, work, so we can have the money, so we could do the what? I don't know. I'm grateful that I can work, have rest, play, work, rest, and play, rest, work, you know, and still be able to do financially what I need to be able to do. And that's not a reality in a lot of people, or it's not a mindset for a lot of other people too.
Right.
Yeah. Might be getting a little
bit
off track here, but
you're not. I'm just thankful that I get to provide this platform to ask you
But I
questions.
just do plants, right? And that's why I'm grateful to also be able to say these things as well, because and where the conversation will go is what I do now. So sure,
let's go.
Yeah,
let's
sure,
let's
plants.
Let's jump into it.
But what is that foundation of plants? Because there's a lot of goal coaches today. There's a lot of coaches in general today. A lot of individuals are referring to themselves as coaches.
Right.
And coaches need coaches. And I think coaches are great. And I have coaches. And would I call myself a coach? No. But have people called me a coach? Yes. And do a lot of, and are a lot of what I provide and the services I provide coaching modalities? Yes. And they're all founded, I think, upon what I just said earlier. Because what I have found is listening to stories, and listening is a characteristic that people struggle with. Because I think sometimes when people are listening, there's this gap of being able to process the information and respond accordingly. But we have this Western societal pressure of responding in conversation so quickly that we don't get time to process what either was just said or the questions that happened. And so what I have found is working with plants has provided people a different approach to healing. And working with plants has connected people to what I believe we all have with this terminology called biophilia, which is we need this connection to nature. And that we're not necessarily whole, or this idea of we're not one's on a journey to one's most whole self, unless we're starting to include the variable of nature and more respect for that and how it shows up in our life, everywhere from oxygen or our diets. And so that's what I do now. I do literally plant installs, working with, whether it's a law firm and plants and things of those sorts. But it started with that root idea of, what brings people joy, a bloom, colors in a bloom. And where do we get encouraged with colors in our life? All the colors that we have, we've been encouraged with from nature, I truly believe.
Okay, so I want to talk about your transition from teacher within public education into stepping into entrepreneurship and, founding Rooney Bloom. Because for a lot of people, maybe it wasn't for you, but for a lot of people, the salary, the para benefits that we have here in Colorado, which are really, really great, and just kind of that routine and that ritual and all that stability, like that is once you're in it, it's very, very hard to leave it. So I want you to discuss, and for you, because, you know, I understand that you're free range, you're free spirit, so maybe it wasn't quite as hard, but what did that transition look like? And I know you just mentioned you were still substitute teaching, but, you know, I'm talking about like kind of full-time teaching thing. What was that transition like from public education into founding Rooney Bloom? And then what has that metamorphosis been like as an entrepreneur, having your own business and kind of going all in with that?
Yeah, so the quick story is fall of 2014, I fell in love with my fiance, Chris. He's in digital advertising, and so I started talking about moving to a bigger city. And the city that he got a job in was San Francisco. So fall of 2014, I consulted with my then boss and principal, who I was referring to a moment ago, and was mentioning, you know, I love teaching, I was in it, but I fell in love and I never had felt this before. And she looked at me and she was like, well, if you're in love, I'm not understanding why you would continue to stay here and forfeit, you know, a bunch of middle school students for love. They'll understand and they'll adapt, and, you know, and so on and so forth. And so we moved to San Francisco, and I was jobless because there was a lot more rules and regulations around teaching jobs in San Francisco, and that's another thing that teachers are up against when they move to state. It's another, for example, you are required to have a master's in the state of New York to teach in a public school.
Right.
And so that alone was very intimidating, thinking about, okay, I'm going to have to pay out for all these new certifications to teach in California, and it wasn't feasible at that time. So I got a job working at the market across the street, and meanwhile I was applying for other jobs in tech, because that was a thing in San Francisco in 2015, right? It was like tech, everything. Yep. I lived across the street from Twitter. My flat looked at their roof, and lived next door to Uber, and so it was a whole different world. I got a job in tech, which was paying quadruple what I made as a teacher, because I'm good at interviews, and I was selling educational technology. It was a platform online that connected teachers' national standards to their curriculum and units, planners, etc. And long story short is there was just funds within the business I was working with that were being misappropriated. And when I started to bring those to light with our CEO, I was fired immediately. Because what I believed was that all humans had this thing called honesty and integrity. And what I quickly found was in this particular situation, they were robbing investors of money and using it for their expenses. And so when I was fired, I started to do the soul searching of like, what is the meaning of life if I can't expect honesty out of other people? So my rent and all of my expenses in my flat was about $4,000 a month. It was 353 square feet, and my rent was $4,000 a month, and I was without a job.
Wow.
And so the only way I could cope was walking, and I would take walks by the flower mart, and I would pick up bundles of flowers, which were very inexpensive, relatively speaking, and I would just start arranging them in my flat. And I would just go up there, I would buy a big vase or vessel of sorts and start arranging floral designs in what many people could consider and think about them as. And eventually they just got to be so large and copious that I had to expand out of there. So we lived in a swanky building, and so I would ask our bellman if I could like decorate our lobby with my floral designs, and he was like, sure. And so I did, and people started asking like where these were coming from. And so for me it was like this healing, because I was sitting up there like pulling the leaves off of roses, you know, taking the thorns off, and it was like healing for me. It was like nature cradling me in this nurturing way to this transition of kind of this entrepreneurial spirit. So as I was designing these, you know, I was kept at this less stressful level. I was kept at this creative level. This level of where I felt that I could continue fostering this fire of creativity so that I could maybe make more opportunities of financial freedom for myself in this jobless situation. So working with nature provided me all these healing modalities that I just had to teach and share somebody else what and how this made me feel and transformed my life. And then as I started to really get into it, I started to see plants in all spaces, whether it was in people's homes, in their gardens, and being able to do landscape design, or being able to have a garden where they could teach their kids about veggie gardening, or having chickens in your backyard, or maybe you have a law firm, but, you know, law firms still have plants because they have board meetings and they have these, you know, whatever, lobbies, airports. You know, look at the Singapore airport. It's got one of the largest indoor plant spaces in the world. And so it kind of quickly transformed from there, moved back to Denver with almost a year to the day from California because that was not a space for us. And my partner was able to work remotely. And I looked at him and I just told him that I wasn't going to be defined by what I could and could not apply for anymore. And I wasn't going to be restricted financially from the constraints of being a public school educator and teaching parts of that curriculum that I didn't want to teach and that I didn't think were necessarily useful for students to know. And so I came back. I taught for one more year in 2016, downtown Denver, creative arts, and that was kindergarten through 8th grade. So I taught all students. And I was reaffirmed very surely that teaching in that setting was not for me. And I decided to take it full time. And I put myself out there, and I just really started working with plants full time, specifically in floral design, because that's where I really started. And self-taught, watching videos. Thank God for social media and social platforms such as YouTube.
Yeah.
Because that's really where I really started studying.
Okay, so I admittedly don't know a lot about plants at all, right? And when I came across you on social media, on Instagram, and kind of was like looking through your bio and all that, I'm like, wow, I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast because like I want to learn. I want my listeners to learn. I want to meet new people. I want to hear new stories and get out of the comfort zone of everything I think I know and all that, right? So here we are. We're at this transition in your story and our conversation where it's like, dude, like I have a messed up rose on my right hand as a tattoo. All I know is like I like roses, right?
Yeah.
Like that's about it, right?
Uh-huh.
So I just want to learn, like when I introduced you, Plantscaper, like, dude, what's a Plantscaper? Commercial and residential, sustainable and conscious integration expert. Like what is that? Like, you know what I mean? Just
Sure.
Explain simply, just kind of the nuts and bolts of what you do, so that I can understand a little bit better, so my listeners can understand, and then we'll kind of transition.
So what I do is anything revolving plants, or involving plants, revolving around plants. And to be able to make sense of it to most people, in layman's terms, I guess they would say, is landscaper. But the reason why I say plantscaper is because when you think about landscaper, you're like, I don't own a house, I live in an apartment. And so I want to redirect that thought of how I could serve you and what that would look like. So plantscaper, doing anything plants. I've worked on anything from baby showers and designing floral pieces for baby showers to weddings. I've done parties where most recently I collaborated with Eddie Bauer, and we filled a lodge in Estes Park, Colorado with 68 native species from Colorado because they wanted to bring the outdoors in. During the summer, I manage multiple estates that have lots of exterior porch pots that need to be planted with annuals. So that happens in the summer. And when I say conscious and sustainable integration expert, and the reason why I differentiate that is because many landscapers are not working with property owners and or property managers in considering the environmental impact that property has on the earth. Here in Denver, Colorado, this is an arid desert. You ask people downtown in the Rhino what type of habitat that Denver is, and I'd be surprised at, number one, the individuals that could tell you the different habitats. But second of all, that they know and are consciously aware that Denver is an arid desert. And so the reason why I say sustainable and conscious integration expert is because when I'm approached with individuals who are homeowners, or I'm approached from property owners who want to improve their aesthetics with an exterior scope, such as, like, we'll just say a landscape. They want to put new trees in. I'm not going to be working with them in putting trees in their yard that are going to be requiring amounts of water that are not going to be sustainable for the weather and the climate here in Denver, Colorado. So the climate is the measure of weather patterns over a long period of time, whereas weather is day to day. So our climate is receiving low amounts of water. And we can see that in our weather patterns in a year-round basis. And so I'm also not going to be working with putting in sod in people's yards either. Sod requires a lot of water. Sod does not grow in Colorado naturally. It's not something that is going to be very conducive to the natural biological diversity that we see here. The animals are not going to love it. They're going to be confused because why are they having all of these swaths of grass? Now, many individuals that are listening that love bees are going to be probably thinking about that statement. Bees love to live in grass, but if you think about it, honeybees are not natural to Colorado. We bring those in because we need things such as pollination. And so bees are not used to living in those things. Bees will burrow in other types of grasses and things that are found here naturally if need be. But those types of species burrow in other types of things. So that's what I do day to day. I work with bringing people to a more conscious awareness around earth and plants, because I truly believe that if people are more conscious individuals, that they can, number one, improve their green thumb, but number two, also improve their impact around earth.
Okay, what's your take on eating plants? Being plant powered,
plant powered. Yeah, I think it's an absolutely doable lifestyle. As far as in the fitness realm, like as far as let me clarify it. So from my take from you, like plants are there's a beauty with the plants. They're sacred. It's a huge part of your life. Like, is there a struggle then for you to like eat plants because you have such an affinity? I love that question. I do think about it. I'm going to be honest with you. I do think about it. Would I say that is there a struggle? No. I would say there's no struggle. Similarly to the struggle that I do have with meat. I do eat meat. Am I trying to get better at considering all aspects of the meat that I'm eating and consuming? Absolutely, on a daily basis. You bet I am thinking about my chickens in my backyard when I'm eating chicken. All the time, every single time. Do I eat chicken often? No. Did I used to eat chicken a lot more? Yes. But plants, and this goes a bit into my philosophy of life, but I believe plants were the first organism on Earth, and I believe that we came from plants, and so that yeah, that's interesting. We got a lot of eye rolls here now.
It's okay.
Yeah, we get okay. So it's similar to not cannibalism, but you go back billions of years ago, and it was blue-green algae in the waters that we had, and blue-green algae is just like a water plant essentially, and then algae essentially evolved into being able to break down carbon dioxide through our atmospheric conditions and release oxygen, and then life began. Essentially, and we've got these growing of plants, and so I don't know. I think it's a beautiful relationship. I would say so. It's not a struggle, but I think it's a necessary relationship. Similar to we need the sun, and that's a relationship that we have, and we consume the energy from the sun. So it's similar to like thinking about it that way.
Yeah.
Now, when I see, like, sometimes I'll be talking to individuals in their yard, and they're fidgety, so they'll like rip off a piece of their grass or a branch and they'll like twirl it in their fingers while we're talking. That hurts me because I'm thinking like, hey, number one, I'm here. You've sought me out as a plant lover to talk about this, but I see a lot of people just detached from it. Similar to like the hikes on Colorado. I don't know why we have so much dog shit bags. And I say that crudely because it's crude. And I think it's embarrassing and I think it's offensive that we have people that love to go hiking but are going to collect, number one, go the extra step to collect their dog in plastic, their dog poop in plastic. But then number two, put a little knot in it, look at their friends and say, I'll get this on the way out. And then they casually forget about it. Every trail here in Colorado has dog poop bags. And I don't understand. Because these individuals are seeking out these lands so that they can enjoy it. And they're loving it. But they're defacing it. And it's these same, yes. I'm working on that.
We're all.
I'd like to meet some of those individuals so I can understand those stories because the only stories I have for them right now are the stories that I've made up.
Right.
And why they are that way. And that's why stereotypes happen. So if anyone listening, has struggled with leaving their dog feces behind in bags on Colorado trails, please reach out to me. We can work together. But just don't collect your dog feces in a bag. Just let it in the woods, right?
And for the listeners that want to reach out to you, Rooney, we're going to throw out your Instagram here a little bit later.
We'll do that.
I want to talk about horticultural therapy. I have no clue what that is. What is that?
So if you break that down, and I'm not a certified horticultural therapist. There are specific programs where people work very hard and they pay a lot of money to be a certified horticultural therapist. I am not a horticultural therapist by a degree. I would say many services I can provide degrees of horticultural therapy. And so what that is, basically horticultural, thinking about it in the most basic terms, plants and therapy, healing with plants. What that specifically would be working with geriatric patients and arthritis, and being able to get their hands in some soil, and being able to work with individuals at assisted living facilities through maybe keeping up with the calendar and planting, so that working with the mental cognition of individuals who, if you don't use it, you lose it. So working with, I don't want to say patients, but clients and individuals who are more searching out plants and improving their spaces with plants because they are looking to reduce their stress, or they're looking to get better, like I said, with the aspects of arthritis or any aspects of those types of healings. And so that's what kind of horticultural therapy would be, is more of that physical therapeutic aspect of plants, and providing those assets. And so my patients, my clients, my benefactors aren't necessarily getting prescriptions from doctors saying you need to invest in $2,000 in plants in your space, or you need a new fiddly fig or a new sansevieria plant in your space. These are individuals who are saying, I can think of one individual, Thanksgiving, I met her on Thanksgiving, who said, I never keep any plants alive. And, I was like, great. And this was also somebody who had exposed themselves as dealing with depression. And so when they told me that they had never kept any plants alive, and I said, why? Where do you live? What's the sunlight in your place? And the individual looked at me and said, well, I never have my windows open, so I'm not really sure what kind of sunlight I have. And I'm like, let's take a few steps back here. Before we even start to talk about plants, maybe you should consider opening the blinds in your place, because if you're not getting lights, how are your plants going to get light? And that not only was a moment of consciousness for me, but that individual, in understanding that plants need light to live, right through this very elementary aspect of photosynthesis, which nobody's talked about since fourth grade when we learned about it, but also what humans need too. And in a literal sense, is we need that energy from the sun so our bodies can produce vitamin D. And also, there's so many other things that we get from light as well, the visual beauties that we're able to pick up on. And so that is a consciousness that I bring people aware to. And quite literally what I do as well, and working with people in growing their green thumb. And people say, like you said, how do I take care of a plant? I don't know anything about plants. I see plants all the time. Or maybe you have a plant in your window. A lot of people, they'll send me pictures. Hey, I have this plant, or, I had this from a funeral, or whatever. And it truly is slowing down. And how much do you recognize and consider the needs of not only yourself, but also of that plant? And you're like, whatever. I don't know about succulents. And I'm like, whatever you do. You need a coach. You need somebody, and I'm not necessarily going to use that word, but you need somebody. And what I have to say is I'm a plant person, but sit down and hear my story of what I do for a minute, because you can take care of any plant if you can also consider on taking care of yourself. And maybe some people are like, well, I can't take care of myself. And I'm like, then focus on you first and work with experts on the human body, maybe before we work with each other. Maybe we work with each other first. Maybe I am that aspect. And so what does that look like? You say, great, what is a succulent? How do I take care of a succulent? How do I take care of a cacti? And I say, okay, close your eyes, or, imagine whatever. There's a billion things that people come to me with on a daily basis. Not on a daily basis, but on a pretty regular basis. Like, I'm watering my orchid. I give it 3 ice cubes a day, and it still is not doing anything. All of these types of things. And to me, I'm like, well, you're detached from something. You're detached from some basic levels of consciousness that I would consider basic, I guess. Imagine where an orchid's at. Where is an orchid at in its natural habitat? Where is a succulent or a cacti at in its natural habitat? And we can role play really quick. Where's a cacti at in its natural habitat? I'm thinking.
Arizona.
Great, Arizona.
Am I right?
Not necessarily. There's one species of cacti. There's one species. No. I'm going to bring you around here.
Okay,
That's a good answer. There's one species of cacti, I believe, that is native to North America. Everything else is really from other parts of the world.
Interesting.
But let's pick up on Arizona. Phoenix, Arizona has a fantastic botanic gardens. I love it so much. And they have tons of cacti, right? Here we go. What, if I'm going to ask you, is the climate, not the weather, the climate like in Arizona?
Arid. Am I right?
You are right.
Oh, man!
Now, this may be a bit embarrassing. What does arid mean? So for everyone that's listening and they're like, oh, I hear he's saying arid. What's arid?
I mean, overall it would be dry.
It's dry. Now, when we're talking about in terms, and that opens up so many possibilities. And again, we're just talking about succulents and cacti care and maintenance here. And you're like, how the heck did I get to Arizona? Well, we're talking about the cacti, in theory, that are growing outside here. They live in an arid climate. What is the sun like? Can you describe that?
It's just straight heat. It's very intense.
Lots of sun.
Yeah.
So would you think a cacti living in a low light environment is going to thrive?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. If you are soaking your cacti every other day, do you think that cacti is going to love that water?
No.
Probably not, right? Because in Arizona, is it raining every day?
No.
How often is it raining?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. And I don't even know how often it rains, but I know well enough to know that a cacti in the desert of Arizona is not getting that much rain.
Right.
So right there, you can already start to make some deductions of plant care and say, great, I have a succulent and it's dying. Great. And we can even break this down even further. I have clients, I say, great, what's the sunlight like? Oh, and again, back to the succulent example. Lots of sun. Great. What is the watering like? I'm watering it every other week. Sounds great. What kind of pot is it in? Is a cacti planted in a closed vessel in the desert?
No.
It has a space that drains away from its roots, right?
Right, yeah.
So that means if you're watering it every other week, but it's sitting in a pot that does not drain, it probably has sitting water at the bottom of the pot, exposing its roots to constant moisture. Going back to this conscious awareness, are roots of a cacti in the desert exposed to sitting water? Q, are they? No, they're not. So why are we doing this to ourselves? It's because we're disconnected from the care. It's because we want that cute plant. We want this cute decor item, which we need to stop thinking that way. We need to start speaking more professionally and appropriately around our landscape and our plants because they're living things and they're giving us something that we need, food and oxygen. We do not have a life. We do not have healthy lives. We don't have a beating heartbeat without plants. And so it's the same thing with tropical plants. People, back to the orchid idea, they say, Rooney, my orchid is not surviving. What's going on? Walk me through it. I'm watering my orchid with ice cubes every week, and there's nothing happening. And I'm like, what? This is insanity. It's the same people that are feeding their children hot dogs out of cans.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
It's complete disconnect. It's a disconnect from like nourishment and number one, what's happening to your child's body from those canned sausages. But number two, what's going on with these plants? So, hey, where do orchids grow? And some people might say, I don't know. And I'm going to say to any adult, let's break this down. We're going to walk through this. You do know. It's inquiry-based learning. I'm going to sit right here with you. Where do orchids grow? Where do they thrive naturally? Name the habitat. Just back to habitats. This is basic.
Dude, I don't.
Where do you think orchids grow?
I don't know what an orchid is. Isn't it a bird?
Oh, no! You guys, Q and I are going to be doing some plant work.
Uh-oh.
An orchid has beautiful flowers. You see orchids with the beautiful flowers. And a lot of...
Wait, is a rose an orchid?
It is. A rose is not. A rose is not an orchid.
I think we're going south.
How about this? I'm trying to think
What's
of
like a bird? Oh, like the hummingbird. They suck... Is that a type of orchid?
What, the plant that they're sucking out of? It is not.
Oh, okay.
No,
I'm really off.
So the plants, orchids, they're in the same environment as what probably some of these hummingbirds you're thinking of. It's close to the equator. What type of habitat would that be?
Hot, humid.
Hot and humid. Florida, tropical, wet, whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
Orchids, I tell people, are never exposed to environments that are close to or at freezing.
Oh, okay.
And so people are going to these plant experts or these plant shops and they're buying these orchids for the indoors spaces and they're watering. And so I say, just back to a conscious space. If the orchid lives in a tropical environment, how should you be watering it? Either misting its leaves or giving it a good soak every once in a while, making sure that it's not drying out because the rainforests aren't drying out. I mean, maybe they are now because of climate change. That's a whole other topic.
Right.
In other parts of the world, but rainforests and tropical regions are, just like you said, they're humid. They have moisture. And so when people can consciously slow down and consider the needs of these plants, and again, then we go into like edible plants, like pepper plants are completely different. You don't have pepper plants that are thriving year-round. It's not what we call a perennial outside, or even what we have as native species. So when you start to make deductions for your own, you can really make a lot of questions and answer a lot of the questions you had for yourself. And I tell, when I walk people through those basic steps, they can go to the store, buy a plant successfully, and feel empowered to care for that plant because I'm hoping that they looked at the sunlight in their space before they went out and bought that plant. Whereas what we see is it's very trendy for people to go to these plant shops. And I'm opening a brick and mortar in 3 weeks from Monday. And I'm not calling it a plant shop because to me it's icky and it's informal because I don't want people shopping for plants. Right. I want people looking for something they're going to have this reciprocation of energy from. They're going to see this benefit of healing from. And I'm going to make sure that everybody that comes into my space is set up for success. I'm considering contracts with all plants. A contract that you sign. It's a living thing. And we better be acting like it because it shows up in how we recycle or how we even consume as human beings.
Dude, I just got like a PhD level course and something to do with plants, man. But seriously, dude, like I can see how you like when you were in public education. I can see how you just pulled those kids in, man, and just like because you're pulling me in, you're getting me involved, right? Like that's
you're gonna get a plant,
dude. It's so good. Okay.
Do you have any plants?
Do I have any plants? No.
Not one plant?
No, man. No.
You know I almost brought you one, Q. I have a gift for you.
Okay,
I'll see you. You need a plant. This is it.
I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for you.
Okay, before we wrap things up, I do want to talk about and touch on what you mentioned earlier in terms of falling in love, right? So you said that you had told the principal, administration, someone that you were close with at the school, like you were in love, that you'd never felt this before. If you don't mind sharing, like what was that falling in love experience like? Because that's something just on a very basic human level. I believe that we're all seeking love, right? And a lot of times we seek love in the wrong places, and then there's these different experiences of love. You kind of have this euphoric love, and there's all this different stuff, right? For you personally, Rooney, what was that falling in love experience like? And then kind of just like what is love?
What is love? Wow, great question. I'm glad I can answer this because I've been reflecting on this a lot recently, and I'm glad that I can share it because it goes back to what we told earlier. And maybe my perspective of what I think love is will give somebody else a different perspective. Being able to understand what love is and to feel love, I first had to understand what my current perspective of what love is, and consider and compare it probably with what others considered love is. So, first of all, what love is to me is an opportunity to grow in a way that supports somebody in authenticity. And notice I did not say anything about genitals in that. And it's weird and taboo to bring up, but I think a lot of people consider love specifically in a gender and thinking, and we do it with our babies, and we do it with, I see people doing it with their babies, and oh, he has a girlfriend at daycare. And it comes down to this idea of what somebody is going to love one day. And so what I think love is I think this ability to connect with somebody, again, back to what I said, connect with somebody in a way that's going to support them to grow authentically. So I love a lot of people. And initially, what I think love was a sexual attraction. And I would say that was probably when I was younger. And I've realized that it's quite not on the same level as sexuality or sex or any of those types of relations are not love. They're different than love. And one way to express love maybe would be through sexual interactions. But so that kind of changed for me when I met the individual that I feel like I'm in love with and have chosen to do love with for my life. And so when I met him in 2014, I think initially it was an outward attraction of somebody and what they looked like. And by the fate of the universe, quickly was flipped to a completely different love, which is somebody who supports me in all of my authenticity, and somebody who I'm able to also teach and assist with in growing in their authenticity and their best self as well. So I think that's what love is. I think love, it has, and it's so cliche to say, but love has no color. It has nothing for me. To me, if a human being identifies as a lizard and wants to identify as a lion, I couldn't care less. I still know that you're worthy of love, that you're worthy of respect, that you're worthy of having the same opportunity and privileges that I have on this earth in what I identify as. And also because of what I identify as doesn't mean that you need to identify as that way as well. So would people call me gay? Yes, they would call me gay. Do I consider myself gay? No, I don't consider myself gay. Do I love men? Yes, I love men. Do you need to put a word on it? Sure. If that helps you feel better, put a word on whatever you need to. But I do know that there's no word for what love is other than just love. And but I think, it can be tough when we don't divulge on what that is, because sometimes just saying I love you isn't enough.
It's empty.
Yeah, it is empty.
It's overused in our culture.
Same as like when I say I'm a landscaper. Mm-hmm. What is that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Think about, for everybody listening and for you, Q, if I just met you one day and was like, I'm a landscaper, versus what you now know I do and am passionate about. Mm-hmm. That's completely different things.
Right.
And so that's what I think I know to be love, you know, and I think I'll always meet people that I love. And, you know, I've chosen to have a partnership with somebody that I'm in love with. Mm-hmm. Am I going to meet other people that I love? Absolutely. Does he know that? Absolutely. And he knows that about me too. But I'm always going to be honest with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's part of what love is. Mm-hmm. And when we, as humans, try to fit in this idea of what love is or in what somebody else's idea of what love is, that's when they're off. And that's when you find all these people searching for relationships that are in and out of relationships all their time. They haven't identified what love is themselves. Mm. Nor have they loved themselves. I don't know if anybody watched drag shows, but RuPaul says something, and whether or not anyone likes to like RuPaul or not, she says, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Mm. Because you can't. And I'm thankful that in my relationship with my partner now, I've been able to learn a bit of both simultaneously. I've been able to learn to love myself better because he's given me space to learn and to love myself.
Right, yeah.
Whereas in other relationships, I didn't have that space. I probably went into that relationship where that person was expecting I was already loving myself. Mm. And so that's why I think another reason why we also have a beautiful relationship as well is because you need to give your partner room to love themselves and to learn what that looks like. Because what loving myself looks like for me doesn't look like the same for you or for Chris or for anybody in this situation. So that's what's really important. Figure out what love is. And it may be a little bit of a different definition to you. But you've got to start to learn to love yourself before you can start learning to love anybody else. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Mm-hmm. And I'm not some relationship guru, you know, I'm not. But 6 years, I feel like I'm doing some really good things great. I feel my relationship is strong. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love him more than I did yesterday and last week and last year and the year before that and the year before that.
Yeah. So. Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. It's good.
Yeah. I'm thank you for giving me a space to share that.
You're very welcome. So the last question to wrap up this thorough conversation that we've had, what sets your soul on fire?
People and animals. And social justice. I get really excited to defend people and our earth, and that sets my soul on fire. Helping people, talking to people sets my soul on fire.
So, Rooney, if somebody wants to reach out to you, if somebody wants to get a hold of you in terms of, the dog poop situation we talked about earlier.
Yes. Please, I am serious. Listen, I am serious. And I know many of you don't know me personally, but anybody that would say he's serious. If you know, and if you are, I just want to know, no judgment here. I'm just curious. I want some inside edition. Yeah. Why do people who collect dog feces in plastic bags leave their bags?
Right. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, if they're interested in connecting with you, if they have been, profoundly positively impacted by something you've shared today, if they're interested in all things Rooney Bloom, where can people follow along? Where can people find out more information?
You can follow me on Instagram at Rooney_Bloom. That's ROONEY_Bloom, just like it sounds, BLOOM. And my email, which is rooney@rooneybloom.com. Those are probably the two best ways to kind of keep up to date with what I'm doing, see examples of my work. see some videos, some vlogs of what I do day to day. And those are probably the best ways. And from there, we'll chat on the telephone and so on and so forth. Pretty soon, you'll be able to visit me at 2949 Federal Boulevard in Denver, Colorado, where I'll have a brick and mortar plant immersion and experience.
Awesome. So, Rooney, I just greatly want to thank you for sharing your story. I want to thank you for taking time out of your life and your experience to meet up with me this evening. We had this plan 7 days ago, and it was kind of snowy, and so I appreciate you just being open to reschedule, and just thank you for sharing your passion with myself. Thank you for educating myself and my listeners. Again, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Q. I am honored to be here and glad I could share my story.
For sure. So 127 Fit Podcast listeners, once again, I am so thankful for you, for your listening ears. Thank you for hanging out with Rooney and myself today on the 127 Fit Podcast. If you would like to find out more about the guests that I'm bringing onto the podcast, if you'd like to find out more about myself personally, you can find out all of that information on Instagram at 127fit. Facebook is at Quentin Vars. LinkedIn is at Quentin Vars. If you guys would do me a huge favor and please subscribe to the podcast along with leaving a 5-star written review, that would be greatly appreciated. If you think you would be a great guest, or if you have a friend or an acquaintance you think would be a great guest or guest for the 127 Fit Podcast, please send me an email or give this email out. The email is 127fit@gmail.com. If you are interested in improving your health, your fitness, if you're looking to get ready for a wedding later in the spring or maybe the summer or the fall, if you're looking to put on some muscle, if you're just looking to take that health, that fitness to the next level, also please reach out to me through 127fit@gmail.com. I would love to set up a free 30-minute phone consultation and see how we can work together to increase that health and fitness, to help you lose that weight, help you to gain that muscle, whatever your health and fitness goals are. I would love to be your coach. I'd love to be your trainer. I'd love to help you reach those goals. One other favor I'd ask of all of you, the listeners out there, as you are finding great value in a specific episode or episodes of the 127 Fit Podcast, in which I know you are, please take that specific episode or episodes that you're finding that great value in and share it on your Facebook and Instagram stories using the hashtag #BeSomeoneToFollow. And per the usual, I will leave you with Proverbs 24:10, which states, "If you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small." This time, until next time, I will catch you guys later.